PhD candidate in the economics department at Harvard University and the founder and director of Sense and Sustainability. And as the moderator of this session, which will continue the theme of Swedish education and what South Koreans can learn from the Swedish education system, I've been asked by the organizers to spend a couple of minutes zooming out to the big picture to remind ourselves of the economic context in which this session is situated. Namely, to reiterate the link between education reform and economic productivity, because I think many of you will agree with me when I say that in Korea today, education reform is a central, perhaps the central policy challenge when it comes to ensuring long-run sustainability of economic growth and economic competitiveness. Okay, so what do we know? Hang on one second. This is not the right version of this slide, so we're going to have to ask the organizers to restart. No, not this one. Okay, false start, timeout. We'll start again in 5 minutes, but thank you. Hello, nice to meet you again. Good news, we can start this again. So, once again, my name is Ji-Sung Park, and I will skip the preliminaries and go straight to the presentation. So what do we know about the connection between education and economy? Well, economists, for a very long time, have documented a statistical link between educational attainment and economic growth. And at the macro level, for instance, we know that countries that have invested in more additional years of schooling have tended to grow faster on average over the past several decades, controlling for initial factors. We also know that within studies, growth accounting studies suggest, within countries, growth accounting studies suggest that the years of education in a population can in some sense be thought of as similar to investments in physical capital, to the extent that both are vital in increasing economic growth. In the United States, for instance, at least a quarter of the economic growth over the past 6 decades can be attributed to additions to the stock of human capital. That is, from the fact that the average American today goes to school for roughly 6 more years than the average American 100 years ago. Finally, at the individual level, we know that more education, higher education, is associated with higher wages and lower unemployment. Now, of course, this is not necessarily to say that the financial returns to education are the only goals associated with higher education, or that this is necessarily a causal relationship. But to the extent that average wages are a good proxy for the productivity or the value added of an individual in the workplace, we can think of these numbers as being instructive. But of course, it's not just the quantity of education that matters. We all know that the quality and orientation of these hours and years of education are very important. Indeed, I would argue, apropos to this session, that a country's education system must, among other things, match the stage of development that the country finds itself in. And here, it seems especially timely for us to be thinking about this, given the fact that South Korea is in some ways at a developmental pivot point. They're at what Paul Krugman would call the point of transition between a perspiration economy and an inspiration economy, an economy that is built on manufacturing and industry that produces things, to an economy that is centered around services and knowledges, an economy of ideas. And so here's a piece of theory that I think might be useful to keep in mind as we watch the four speakers that will present in this session. But development economists often make a distinction between two types or two phases of economic growth. Phase one growth, often referred to as catch-up growth, is about the involves the process of catching up to the technological frontier. Phase one growth is about moving from primarily rural to urban populations, from agricultural to industrial activity. It's about plugging a country into the globalized flow of trade in physical goods and commodities. And it usually, as has been mentioned in previous sessions this morning, involves the efficient application of existing ideas and technologies from frontier economies like Sweden, like the United States, like Japan. And so Korea's economic story of the 1970s and 80s and 90s is in some ways a textbook case of masterful phase one growth, right? In fact, in economics textbooks, it is often literally the textbook case. But phase two growth is rather different. Phase two growth involves moving to what economists call an endogenous growth frontier. That is, the endogenous or internal generation of new technologies, of pushing forward the technological frontier. And as you can imagine, this is a fundamentally different kind of growth, which at its core is about innovation. It's about creating new products in new markets rather than penetrating existing ones. And so you can intuit why this distinction between phase one and phase two growth is important at a general level. More specifically, I'd argue that it informs how we want to think about Korea's education system, namely because the educational institutions required for endogenous phase two growth are often very different from the ones needed for phase one growth. So to the extent that phase one growth requires the efficient application of existing blueprints from countries on the technological frontier, your primary source of comparative advantage is in the efficiency, the speed of application, right? In lowering costs while maintaining quality. So Hyundai, Samsung, Kia, Daewoo, right? These companies, for the most part, grew to prominence by taking existing blueprints, say from a Japanese competitor, taking them apart, modifying them slightly, and figuring out a way to make them more cheaply and more efficiently than their Japanese or American counterparts. So one can imagine that the important educational inputs for this sort of growth include things like math literacy and numeracy, the ability to learn and follow existing rules, a strong work ethic, and vertical organizational structures. So if you think about it, South Korea's education system is very well suited for phase one growth, right? I invite you to think back to your high school years, or if you're old enough, to your children's high school education. What does an average school week look like? I'm going to guess it involves a lot of memorization, a lot of rote learning, learning a lot of facts and equations, right? And how do we test our students? We still place a huge emphasis on standardized exams, right? Notably on multiple choice exams where there is almost always, by definition, one correct answer. And that's pretty useful when there's only one correct way of assembling a microchip and not screwing it up. Maybe not so much for phase two style innovation. And I think tellingly, there's often a heavy emphasis on showing up on time and staying and working long hours. Right? I'm always amazed, actually, by the lines, the traffic jams that occur in places like Daechidong or Apgujeong at around 11 p.m., right, 12 p.m. at night, when parents come to pick up students from the hagwons, the after-school educational facilities that they've been working at since 3 p.m. when they got out of school. I think I'm not the only one who finds himself wondering, when do these kids ever sleep, and is this actually an efficient way to learn? That's case in point. So I think the point that I would like to stress before we move on to the speakers of this session is that relative to a country like Sweden, South Korea has an education system that is not yet anyway very well suited for phase 2 growth. And as we will see and have already seen from the presentations in the previous session and that will follow, phase 2 growth requires a very different set of skills and human capital base in a population and a different set of educational institutions to equip them with that. And just to reiterate a couple of themes that have already been mentioned, right, these types of educational institutions require an emphasis on creative, independent thinking, an education system that is less about simply following the rules, but maybe more about mastering the rules so that you know when to break them. A system that is less about memorizing as many facts and equations as possible, but more about combining the most important raw elements in creative new ways. Less about having all the right answers all the time, and maybe more about knowing how to ask the right questions. So as, again, I'm sure we'll see, there are many great examples that South Koreans can learn from in Sweden, especially to the extent that the Swedes have been at the phase 2 growth game for quite some time. Okay, so before I hand it over to our first speaker, I just wanted to make one procedural suggestion. I'd like to suggest to everyone in the audience to really try to come up with questions, even if you don't end up asking them during the Q&A. There's a lot of pedagogical evidence to suggest that the more actively engaged we are, right, the more we'll learn. And I know either you or your host organizations paid a pretty penny for you to be here, so think of this as your way of getting your money's worth. So with that, let me hand it over to our first speaker, Professor Sumi Park from Lund University, who will be speaking to us about reflective learning and the laboratory approach in the classroom in Sweden. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. It's not a time where we can assume that all of you have very fresh mind, but I hope that I can keep you concentrated. The title of my speech is Ambidextrous Learning Approach. That is focusing on knowledge exploitation and exploration. These days, organizations for making innovation, they focus very much on how to make ambidextrous organization. That means within one organization, one department, for instance, focus on exploitation on the existing practice and continue to practice that so that they continuously improve those existing skills, competencies, and the way of doing business. While other departments in the organization, they concentrate on exploration and try to see whether totally new method, this method can be applied and try to find out the best way. So this way, one is improving and one is trying to discover a new creative way of doing business. And the last in my title, in the experience economy. So here the focus is ambidextrous learning in the experience economy. We have moved from agricultural economy to industrial economy, and third to the service economy. Also, it is called information society or knowledge-intensified society. But some of theoreticians are saying that we have already moved further on to experience economy. Actually, if we see most innovative product and service, then the things which are added is actually experiencing functions. Those smart TV, mobile telephones, all those innovative products are actually equipped more experience element into its product. So these are my focus areas through my speech. While we have moved to this experience economy, still our learning techniques and method and classroom practices are not catching those elements. So I try to practice providing experiencing classroom where we have several processes. One process trying to exploitation of the existing knowledge and the way to analysis and already existing interpretation of the knowledge. And other process try to focus on explorations. Doing this, designing ambidextrous class, actually we need to have several, at least two processes. Of course, one process is we can continue with traditional teaching practice, but at least the other structure, other activities are focusing on destructing already learned theories, analysis, and the way of learning. So that means one activities are focusing on maximizing on studying existing theories, but the other activities are focusing by destructing, by ignoring all those well-known methodology. We focus on creative discovery. When we talk about learning and knowledge accumulations, actually at the university classroom, what we are doing is going through all these different activities. These are cognitive domain. I have not included here the physical domain. We are used to knowledge recall, data, information, facts, and concepts, also comprehension activities, understanding the meanings. Understanding meanings, there are also many ways to do. Explain own words, comparing with other processes. Also, when we are talking about application area, there are also multiple ways of application. Use knowledge, apply new situation, solve the problem. In solving the problem with the application of knowledge, there are also so many different ways. Analysis, when we make analysis, there are also multiple ways. Analyzing, questioning, comparing, break into different parts, and then make synthesis. Making synthesis means we make our own structure, try to add new meanings, new patterns, and combining different elements. Also, evaluation activities is important. What is the best theory, but what is the best solution, and choose principles. Also, if we mean the existing theories are the best, we defend, and then we also add a kind of value. Oh, this is correct, this is wrong, this is less good. So one activities, in one knowledge exploitation activities, here we go through, of course, those existing knowledge and know-how and going through here. But when it is activities of knowledge exploration, we destruct, after students have been introduced all those existing theories and existing analysis, interpretation, and so on, at the following days, they organize seminars or also methodology, how to make those explorative activities are free, so that they can gather different materials, articles, or also case studies, which actually give a critical view. Right? So first part, they learn all facts, all existing methodology. But following days, they try to destroy. They try to see from other perspective, undiscovered perspective. Also, when students prepare this destructive part, they get minimum specification. That means professors give very few rules. They can organize theater, they can organize scenario, or they can, of course, also use one-way communication, traditional lecturing method. Method is free, but the importance is that important criteria when they organize this explorative session, they should be creative, they should be original. Also, they should consider that everybody in the classroom can be engaged. So they shall think by themselves and design it. So, beside on that, the classroom, that discovery part, especially those explorative part, students shall also think that classroom atmosphere should deepen experiencing moment. When we talk about experience, then the most idealistic experience is that we try to of course, engage all our senses, to hear, to touch, to see, to smell. If there is a good atmosphere, we get continuously emotional experience. When we have a nice classroom atmosphere, then also people are more engaged, and also sensing, good sensing experience is related to good emotional experience. We become happy, harmonious, also more engaged when we get a positive emotional experience. And also through behavioral experience, through interaction, dialogue, and all these activities, they can also get behavioral experience. It's through action. Also, explorative part, focusing on social interaction. More students are opened. More students are open to express their meaning, regardless it's a correct question or a stupid questions. When they are encouraged, they become really good to have a trustworthy social atmosphere. So, and then finally, of course, intellectual experience. It's all activities are trying to stimulate our cognitive domain. So that was, of course, traditional parts. But also spiritual experience. Here, in this sense, I mean, this is the core area of science. Science, we try to find out what is truth. So it is, of course, also related, correct and bad. And these days, Sweden, especially those core values like sustainable development, business ethics, what is the right way to run the business. All these issues, and equality, diversity in the classroom is also very important. So these are related to experience, spiritual experience. So more students, these are, we can say, experience-scape or learning-scape. More we organize and engage all these different experiences, our learning become profound experience and at the same time very effective, efficient learning process. So in this is my final transparency. How much time do I have?
5 minutes.
Oh, beautiful.
More than on time.
Yeah. So we can say that in this ambidextrous classroom or ambidextrous learning organization, we need to practice a new way from already Mr. Park focused on, from traditional learning, facts-based learning, and just what is to find the right answer. Here we encourage right questions. Nothing is black and white. Today's correct knowledge can be obsolete tomorrow. So here really coming with the right questions is more important than having a right answer. Okay, so in this paradigm, Yeah. Of course, students' role is not passive, but they should be proactive. They are actually considered as co-creator. In any kind of experience economy, actually, there is no producer or no customer. all are producer, co-producer, and co-consumer. So in this classroom, I become more and more inspired when I learn through my classroom activities. So we have here the meeting point. I, as professor, my goal is learning through classroom activities. And students, they are there also in order to learn. So we are co-creator and co-consumer. So all of us shall be active. And it is from thought paradigms is facilitated. Everybody facilitate. Sometimes the students even organize before they start their explorative class. They organize from traditional chair and table arrangement to sometimes to teamwork or a round table or whatever, which is well matching to the activities they have designed. One-way communication, from traditional one-way communication to multiple communication, multiple way of dialogue and discussions, from authoritative teaching to participative and critical thinking in equal position, and static curriculum to dynamic curriculum, theory-based to theory and practices and reflections. Critical thinking also here again important. Books in library, it's a virtual library, academic or supervisor control to learners control. We are all born as learners. Babies are the best learner actually, but while we are growing up, we lose the happiness, the joy in learning. So we shall rediscover how we enjoy again as our babies does. Huh? So controlling to supporting, empowering, from knowledge to that knowledge to learning. Competitive paradigm to cooperate paradigms, support each other. And then finally, also we hope that they develop interdependence, not dependence. They first shall become independent, and finally, through this cooperative structure, we hope that students get interdependence paradigm. Individual focus to team focus. Yeah. I have 20 seconds remained, but I'm finished. Thank you.
Great. Great, thank you, Professor Park, for that comprehensive and thought-provoking presentation. Now, please join me in welcoming Professor Victor Ovel, Dean of the Technical Faculty and Professor at Lund University.
So thank you for the introduction. So I will talk innovation in engineering at Lund University. As a dean, I think I will first start by saying a few words about the Faculty of Engineering. And then our Vice President, Eva Wiberg, will say a few words about Lund University later on. Then I will talk about some innovation in education, how our innovation structures facilitate students, and also give a lot of examples of projects that we have been running at Lund University. So, even though Lund University is quite old, 350 years, the Faculty of Engineering is a bit younger. It's 50 years plus, and it was founded in 1961. It's one of the largest faculty of the university. It has around 6,000 full-time equivalent students, around 500 PhD students, 1,600 employees, around 200 professors, and around 1.7 billion Swedish crowns in turnover. Oops. Right. So what I want to show, what is this up here? It's a fountain, and it's kind of a symbol for the Faculty of Engineering, and it's kind of funny. It's a total engineering failure. It has not worked very long, and it has not been running since I was a student in the early 80s at the university. And so we have a symbol, a total engineering failure. It's kind of funny. It's beautiful, though. We have 16 Master of Science Engineering programs, five-year programs. We have 5 bachelor's programs. We also have architects, industrial designers, and I will come back to the industrial designers, fire protection. And we also have 11 international master's students program open for all countries where everything is taught in English. So there is an expression in real estate in the US called location, location, location. That means that location is everything when you try to sell a house. Here is a satellite picture of outskirts of Lund. This is the Faculty of Engineering. This is Ideon Science Park, the first science park in Sweden. It's been running since 1983, and it has around 350 companies. So this is very important for us and for also the students. Oops, that was the wrong one. We also have, so those are mainly startups or smaller companies. We have also a lot of big companies like Ericsson, Sony, Apple, Tech Mahindra, sitting a little bit outside Ideon. The reason I take this is probably because I'm an electrical engineer from start and also worked in wireless communications. So I'm a little bit biased towards those companies, but there are others as well. We also have something called Medicon Village, where a lot of companies, startups in the area of medical sciences. And then there is, I don't know if you heard about it, if you're from Sweden, you have Max 4 and ESS. So here we were before, so this is around 10 minutes walking, 5 minutes by bike. It's a photonic light source, Max 4, that is currently in place. This is a picture. This is a Swedish national project. The ESS, with 1.5 billion euros or something like that, is currently being built, and it's a European project with a lot of European countries financing this. I think Eva will also say a few more words. It's 2 of the most exciting research facilities in Europe today, being built in Lund. Now coming to what we do for students, creativity and learning. So we have some things that help the students. One of them is something called Venture Lab. So it's been around for more than 10 years. It has a goal to inspire and educate our students and help them about entrepreneurship and innovation and help them to develop businesses. So they work with 3 focus areas: information and inspirations, business development and advice, and has an incubator for startups. Around 150 ideas from students are worked with every year. Some turn into companies, but of course, not everything. Oops. This is in Swedish. It's just some numbers. The first one here is number of first-time visitors, and we see it's around 150, like that. So some of them are turned into companies. There are 3 logos, but of course a lot of them never come off the dashboard. Leapfrog is another activity, and those are of course connected. This is a rather new activity, started in 2012. So they give seed money, we can say, or they help students get support. It's not very much, around 3,000 US dollar, 25,000 Swedish crowns. They get it to help them start up or explore their ideas. And you can see some of them: electric surfboard, sleep carrier, and now it's sound absorbers. And this is made out of something that's called lichen, which I never heard of. It's something that grows in Sweden. I won't go into the details about what it is. The Swedish word is there, renlav. You can look it up. We also have, and a lot of the students, you have to do prototyping. This, of course, depends on what you do. But you need to be able to prototype. So we have something called Black Pearl, a prototyping lab. And we are discussing extending this prototyping lab to something bigger. There is 1,000 square meters facility in this lab. And you are able to do rapid prototyping, and there are people who help you out. This is then a 3D printing workshop that was been running early this year, and I will come back to 3D printing at the end of my presentation. And the last one of those, Lunicorn. This is not really innovation, but this is to help students get contact with company. So it's a student consulting company. And they pay their way themselves. This is in million Swedish crowns, so divide by 10 or 8 to get it into US dollar. And it goes pretty well. So, coming to some student innovations, and I will go through some examples. Bananas. There are 100 million tons of bananas that are produced annually that is never used because they are maybe just a little bit brown. If bananas in Sweden become a little bit brown, nobody buys them. So you throw them away. So the task in this project, there's some master students in food technology, which is a strong area in Lund. They should say, what can we do with this? 100 million tons of banana. That's not only in Sweden, but there's a lot of bananas in Sweden. So they come up with the idea of banana flour, including the peel. Actually, when I heard about it, it became better because in the beginning, they just used the inside of the bananas when they produced the flour, but when they took everything from the bananas, the flour became better. That's what they told me. So they bake cakes and so on, and with actually very interesting results. People who have tried it say they are good. I don't know. So of course you can reduce the waste, so you use the bananas, and you can make a business out of that. And I talked to Knut, who is the head of the faculty, no, the Department of Physics, and there is also a company coming making marmalade from old fruits and so on that his son has been involved in. He told me that yesterday, so it's not added to the presentation. But also, of course, you have to think. You cannot just say, oh, go ahead and do something with bananas. So this is what I used in a project course in packaging, but you should get some inspiration. Then you go to the ideas, and then you need to implement. And then, of course, as we have seen in the previous presentation, you have to go around here all the time. And then you have to also check the market. Is it desirable? Will anybody want this banana flour? Is it feasible? Is it viable? That means, can I make money out of it? And of course, here you have to circulate around. And in this project course, they wanted to create sustainable fast food packaging. That was one of the projects. And in that course, again, it's a lot about brainstorming and creating the ideas, and of course, you have to look what exists. And what they come up with, one of the project was how to use cartoon to actually adapt this already at children in school age. So they're using the cartoon Calvin and Hobbes to educate the students. So, coming to physics, so that was food science. Entrepreneurship in nano, and then it's from Knut's department. So there is a rather new engineering program, maybe 10 years, around 10 years, in engineering nanoscience. And in Lund is actually world leaders in making nanowires. So it's a very strong research department at Lund University. So this is nanowires, and this is from the lab where they make nanowires within the university. So in this group, in this course, students in groups of 4 to 7 get ideas. Usually they come ideas from the research. But they should do it all. They could bring their own idea, or they come up with an idea together with researchers. They should test it in the lab. They should patent it. They should write the business plan and maybe start a company. And then we have IDEON and we have those facilities. And I should also write a popular science article. And this is, of course, a course. It's 15 credits. It's examined by teachers, by professors, and so on. And one example from that is a company called Cellivate, 3D nanostructure cell growth media. That is to cell culture system, the next generation. This is what they say on their webpage because it's a company. So they create highly porous and consistent networks of nanofibers, nanowires, if we relate it to. And to provide science researchers with better incubators for cell growth. It started as a project in the course in 2012. Now it's a growing startup. They have a website, if you want to, it's easy to remember. And they are actually then involved in the course again, because this company has provided 2 new ideas for the course that is running in 2015. I will have some case study also from industrial design. And this is the building for industrial design up at the Faculty of Engineering. IKDC stands for Ingvar Kamprad Design Center. And yes, that is the IK here is the same IK that is in IKEA, because Ingvar Kamprad actually was the guy who launched the IKEA furniture stores worldwide now. Are they in Korea? IKEA? They are. I should have checked. I have been teaching in this program, teaching electrical engineering to the students in industrial design for the last 10 to 15 years. So I will take 2 projects that has really made an impact. Hövding, it's a Swedish word for shiftel. Airbag for cyclists. People in Sweden cycle a lot, and especially in Lund. Lund is a cycling town. And you should wear a helmet. People who don't want to wear a helmet, for instance, because they're vain, like myself, I guess, I would never put a traditional bicycle helmet on my head. So they created an airbag. So you have it around your neck, and if you fall, it blows up like an airbag in a car. And I have a company now. This was a master thesis in 2005 by Anna Haupt and Therese Alstein, which I had as students once upon a time. They won something called Venture Cap in 2006, and after that they founded a company. In 2011, they was awarded the Danish Index Award, designed to improve life. And this is from, when they got the award, is from the new Danish opera house. I think it looks like it in Copenhagen. So now it's a company with around 20 employees. And here again is a website. But recently, both Anna and Therese has actually left the companies in 2014 and 2015. But it's kind of fascinating, I think. Another one, more recent, is orbital system, shower of the future. So the idea here is Merdad had a student. I also had him as a student and actually helped him quite a lot with this. Not with the ideas, they are completely his own. It's having a shower where the water is circulating. So you could reduce water consumption by up to 90% and reduce the energy because you don't need to heat the water. And I would say in Sweden we have quite a lot of waters, but reducing the energy is quite important. This sounds kind of gross, right? Standing and the water circulates, and then comes the next guy, and I use the water from the previous guy. But I have actually a technology here that is patented that cleans the water. So actually the water coming out of this filtering is actually cleaner than the water you get out of the tap if you turn it on. Merdad started this as a bachelor work. Then he got some innovation support from Lund University. He continued doing his master thesis on the same project, which is a little bit not really allowed usually. Then he got help through the Lund University Innovation System and Vinnova, which is the innovation agency in Sweden. And then he formed a company that was in an incubator, actually in Malmö, which is the next city. And I was there meeting him in December. And then he was on his way to move out of the incubator because he had grown too big for the incubator. So actually the technology came from a project when he was visiting NASA, the American Space Agency. So it's not rocket science comes because the filter he used in his shower is actually NASA produced thing. And it got quite some attention. This is Merdad, so he was actually on CNN. And it has been all over the world. It's been in newspaper all over the world because this could be a really big thing. Finally, I just round off, 1 minute left. 3D printing. We think 3D printing, I saw something I showed in the beginning from this prototype lab. 3D printing is something that is growing and growing and growing. I think it will change the way we produce and prototype and everything. This is actually some student projects. Why I took those? Because it's mini refrigerator for storing insulin and vacuum insulated tube to carry insulin. And why I picked those? Because I'm actually diabetic myself, so it's kind of funny because those are not funny looking things that you carry around. Olaf Diegel, who is the professor, I will finish with this. This is not student project, but he's making electric guitars from his 3D printers. And I would like to end, this is not student, but they created a student band, so can we please play? I promised they should play it for me. Yes. Music, but the student band Zero, I think the name is quite funny as well. So it works, and apparently the guitars are rather good. Thank you very much. We don't have to listen to it all.
Thank you, Professor. So thank you for sharing some of your students' projects with us. Please join me next in welcoming Professor Jan Wickenberg from Charles University of Technology. Professor?
I'm so curious. The drums too, are they printed on a 3D printer?
Actually, the
Not the skin. Okay, the skin is natural. I am researching and teaching management, and in order to teach management, I need to help students understand organizations. And for them to understand organizations, they must understand human behavior. And that is a lot to learn, because a lot of the challenges that we face when we organize and when we manage comes out of things that would be difficult to learn. And the reason I'm interested in this is that I worked for 20 plus years, 22 years in the industry, in an R&D division in the pharmaceutical industry. Before that, I pursued a career as an officer in the naval forces, and I will tell you a little bit about that later. Now, there is a challenge when I teach students from Far East Asia. The challenge is to get the students to quickly adapt to this out-of-the-box thinking in order to keep up with the speed that I need to teach them in order to understand the human basics underneath organizing, underneath management. That's the challenge for Far East Asian students, if I may stereotype. The advantage for Far East Asian students is those who succeed typically become my best students. That's a good thing, yes? And earlier, before the break, we discussed the differences between Korean and Swedish educational systems. I haven't had that many Korean students, so I can't say a pattern. I can only say a pattern of Southeast Asian students is that I have never met a lazy Southeast Asian student. And I must admit I have met a few lazy Swedish students. I can't blame that for their creativity, but now you know that probably on the way towards creativity there is a dragon seed. And the dragon seed is if you understand well enough that if you are creative, you don't have to study hard, you become lazy, right? So try to be a hard studying nation together with being creative. That would be the combination to go for, yes? So, the first exhibit I do when I teach management, and the management I teach is within the innovation management area. I'm interested in inhibitors to organizing, inhibitors to making innovation systems work, is that I ask students a question, and I would like to ask you that question. See if you outperform my students. Imagine that the next full moon, there is a princess somewhere in the world. She finds the lamp of Aladdin. You know that, yes? If you polish it, all of a sudden, out comes the genie. And the genie will ask the princess, "Dear princess, do you have a wish?" And the princess says, "Oh, dear genie, please stop the moon from circling the earth so that every night there will be a full moon." That will be her wish, and the genie will make it come true. Which will be the consequences? This is typically the reaction from my students too, so I typically yell at them. I won't yell at you, because we don't have that psychological contract, yes? So this is not good enough. You must have ideas, even the bad ideas. And all of a sudden there is one student coming with a bad idea, and I say, "Yeah, that was an idea, thank you very much. Do anybody have a better?" And all of a sudden, it comes a lot of ideas. The best student I've ever heard answering this question was an Indian student. He had the right way of thinking from the start. He said, "Well, the tidal waves must be maximized." And then he found out that he was wrong. And no, minimized, because the moon is on the other side relative the Earth to the sun, yes. And number two, the werewolves would go ballistic. I really liked that. If you subscribe to the idea that werewolves yell at the moon, yes. And then he said, "And the moonshine would become brighter and brighter until the moon hits the earth." And that's the answer I wanted to have. Because he showed to me that he understood Newtonian mechanics, yes? And if you just study it on root studying, you don't get that actually the moon wants to hit the Earth, and the Earth wants to hit the sun. And we are so grateful that it always fails, yes? Because it would be difficult to manage innovation where the Earth would hit the sun. So, I have chosen not to discuss any more about Newtonian mechanics. I have an illustration before you here, and it's a set of figures, and their shadows are larger than what they are. And this is the cover of my PhD thesis. This is an artist's illustration of what I found there. And this is a managerial problem, because when you're a manager, you have a power, and you can inspect your organization. And when you inspect your organization, you shine with a torch of power on people. And then they shape up. Yes, sir. No, sir. And when you turn the torch off and go away, they relax and they behave exactly as they would without you being present, yes? Typically, as managers, we don't like this. It's a bad idea. People are supposed to tell me what they do. People are supposed to behave rationally in the organization, yes? But look at these figures. They are happy, aren't they? So what I conclude, it's not only crimes going on in the dark. Of course it's bad if somebody steals in the organization. It's bad if people don't do what you tell them to, because then you don't know what they are doing, and an organization without a head will soon be a dead organization, yes? But there are some advantages of this heavy interpretation that goes on. And I would like to lead you through an example that I use in my teaching to illustrate how I try to make students catch up quickly on how to think. And as you put it, how to ask the correct questions, not to have the right answers. So, the purpose of this then, and this is a happy student as you can see, I would like to teach you the simple case of Pontus, and who Pontus is I will soon tell you. I would like you to share with me, and perhaps you already done that, the marvel of the complexity on how organizations actually work without us managing them in detail. And thirdly, to illustrate perhaps the creativity needed by my students in order to perform well in the end. A fourth reason could be for me to do some scientific studying if Korean humor is the same as Swedish humor, because I think this story is quite funny, and I'm the fool in it, so I don't insult any students, or you, I hope. Okay, to the story then. Once, when I was young, I was pursuing a career as an officer in the Swedish naval forces. And when doing so, we were to know how to drive these. This is a terrain vehicle, as you can see, and me being a Swede, then you can be damn sure that it's either a Saab or a Volvo. This is a Volvo, it's called a TG11. And this was the military version of a day in the driving school. And I know that at least all men in Korea have extensive army service when you're young, so you perhaps sympathize with this story, yes? And this day in driving school, there were about 6 cars, about 6 cadets. I was driving the first car, Pontus was driving the second. Everything was perfect. We were driving 50 kilometers an hour, 50 meters between each vehicle to the prescribed road, wherever that was. But all of a sudden, I bumped into a problem because I approached a hill. And mid up in the hill, it was ice. And mid up the hill, my rear wheels started spinning, like this. And I couldn't get up. Pontus stopped at the foot of the hill, and the other cars piled up behind him. And this is a terrain vehicle. You can solve problems like this, yes? So I engaged the differentials. I engaged four-wheel drive. I put in low gear, and I hoped to solve the problem. But instead of the wheels going, now there was another noise, when all 4 wheels spun on the ice instead. I couldn't get up. I didn't know how to solve this. My creativity had ended. So of course I did what most young people do in that situation. I did something else. I started looking in the rearview mirrors at Pontus' face driving the next car, or rather not driving the next car. And all of a sudden there was this phenomenon, this strange phenomenon that really took my interest. I know this is not possible, but I could see that it actually was happening. His face was slightly growing. That's weird, yes? And yeah, that must be because my car is sliding towards his. And now I can see that Pontus has noticed too, because his face has gone from like this to, or something like that, yes? And he's not doing anything. Had he been a civilian, he would have gotten out of the way, but he was just standing there not doing anything at all. So I found a way, because we were not alone in the cars. There were poor enlisted boys there whose job was to help us by scouting for enemy attack aircraft, but since this is a peaceful time, we have told them to stop scouting. It's no use. There will be no Russian planes here today. So instead, I ordered my guy to order a reverse in the convoy, and they are trained to do this, you know. He opened the side window, and they have white gloves, and he did an 8 like this, and it was repeated by all his colleagues, and the drivers started reversing, and Pontus got out of the way, and I slid down exactly to the space where his cars had been second before. I saved my day. All of a sudden, the traffic instructor appeared. I don't know from where he came. I didn't have him in focus. He was just there, opening the door to my car and giving me some tip. A very militaristic style tip, he said. "Wickenberg, this is a terrain vehicle." Boom! And he slammed the door and went away. Militaries, we speak like that. And this is all the information I needed. So of course, instead of going up the hill, I went through the lingonberry bushes next to the road instead, up to the crest of the hill, where I stopped and waited for Pontus to come up, and he jumped out of his car, and we had a friendly discussion about behavior in traffic, and when our emotions calmed, we walked to the top of the hill and looked down for the other cars, the 4 of them, and they are just poof, gone. 4 cars just poof, vanished. Where are they? Do you think? Any ideas? You are much more talented than my students, and of course you have the answer, but you are polite, so you're not telling me. Of course, they are still reversing, yes? They are reversing, so I have to ask Pontus to turn over his car and go down and order a forward in the convoy. And the last guy, the guy in the last car, he was so angry. "Who is the idiot who gave that order? Driving in reverse for more than 1,000 meters with these tiny rearview mirrors. Who's the idiot?" "Yeah, it was me," I said. And this is what we call a military service story. I've told it in a bar a couple of 100 times over the years, a more elaborated way, of course. But all of a sudden, about 15 years after this happened, all of a sudden I asked myself another question. And asking yourself other questions are important. I asked myself, wait a minute, how come that Pontus didn't go in reverse? That's odd, yes? The order was reverse in the convoy. He reversed, then stopped, went after me. Why? Fellow Swedes, what would be your idea to explain this strange phenomenon? Oh. Say again? He broke the rule. He disobeyed the directive, yes? So again, you said that it's important to know the rules in order to know when to break them. Yeah, because he probably saw what was going on, yes? So he saw the reason for the order. And when I went up the hill, he understood, so he followed me. The strange question then comes. When we walked back to the crest of the hill and looked down, he was as surprised as I was that the others were gone. So if he's that clever, How come he didn't tell me, Jan, now I disobeyed your order and followed you up just so that you are aware of that, yes? And the answer to that is probably, we can never know when it comes to social science, we probably can safely assume that he was not aware of him doing it. He was as surprised as I was that this happened. So we have here an exhibit, one situation at least, in an organization where somebody breaks the rule, does something better than according to the outcome of the rule, and would not be aware of them doing it. I don't know how dominant this is. I just know as a software engineering manager for a number of years, this was very common when it comes to you ask people how they are organized, they tell you something, you go away and you code, and then you return it, and then they say, whoops, we forgot to tell you that, baba, and all of a sudden they realize how they actually work when you try to support them with a specific IT system, and then they learn how they actually work. Yes, it's our IT system who tell them how they actually work, although they are working with it. That is fantastic, isn't it? So, embedded in this story, I would say, would be that Pontus did not do as he was told. You were very correct in that, Professor. He interpreted the purpose of the directive and did something better. He was not aware that he did this, so he could not inform his superior. If we are to organize companies to increase creativity and innovation, we will bump into this mechanism. Even under torture, people will not be able to tell you what they actually do because they are unaware of it. And of course, those of you who have read the Kahneman book, Thinking Slow and Fast, you have bumped into the cognitive theories that would explain this, yes? So what I try to offer you here during these few minutes would be to mind that if an organization doesn't work as you have ordered it to, it may not be the reason of office politics. It could be something else too. So if we compare these two, if what you are told to do and what you actually did differ, we would typically call that office politics if you cover it up, yes? If you go and say, boss, I didn't paint the garage as you told me because there were no paint, then it's not office politics. But if you steal the paint, you wouldn't tell your boss that. You would shut up about that, and that's office politics. It's, in fact, a crime, I would say. Compare it to this, then. What you think you did and what you actually did, if we have a difference there, it's distortion. And my purpose of introducing my students to being able to observe this in business makes them better students, makes them perform better at my exam, of course, but I wish and I hope and I'm confident that they will also be better when they become managers, that they understand that an organization is not a rational unit where some people deviate by pure intent. They might not even know it. And typically, many students get to train this when they go for their master thesis, when they write that, because typically they get an assignment and they find that the assumptions from the managers are not correct, and they can find something much more interesting underneath. Are you intrigued? But you knew this, yeah, right? I haven't said anything new. I just put some theory to it now. So the main takeaway that I would give to students early on would be to be creative, ask the right questions. When you think about how people break the rule, there might be constructive or cognitively hidden reasons for it. And that makes the studying of organizations a true marvel, I would say. So, if you're interested in this, you can read anything in Harvard Business Review written by Chris Argyris. He's kind of the icon when it comes to organizational learning. There is a good master thesis by an Australian woman called Lyanne Anderson that concludes it in a good way. You can read Daniel Kahneman's good book, Thinking Fast and Slow. It's really thick. I've never managed to read the full lot of it without falling asleep. Still, I advocate that it's a very good book. And of course, if you're interested in my PhD thesis, it's online, including the cover. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Wickenberg, for a very engaging presentation. So please join me in welcoming our final speaker for today's session. Professor Eva Weberg is the Vice President of Lund University. Professor?
So I would very much like to go back to what the first speaker of this afternoon said, our Speaker of the Swedish Parliament, Urban Ahlin. And he said something about that it's important that research and education go hand in hand so that we can have some kind of innovative ideas to bring our societies forward. And I think this is very important to realize. Research and education, they are very closely linked. And at the same time, we're talking about the independency that our Swedish students are taught at a very early age, you could say, and also the fact that they are taught to be critical, to the critical thinking. So this is what our students are up to in Sweden. That's very important, autonomy and the critical thinking. At the same time, you, Ji-sung Park, you told us that the traditional way of education here in Korea has to be changed and that you are looking forward to some kind of creative, independent thinking for the future for Korea. And I think that we have a lot to learn from each other, and I hope that the outcome of this session and the seminars on this key platform will be that we together, the Swedish universities and the Korean universities, can work and enhance so that we bring forward innovative ideas. But going back to what I said about the independency and the fact that research and education should go hand in hand. Well, you said, Ji-sung, that to master the rules, you have to know how to break them. You also have to know how to ask the right questions. This was something that you were into also, Jan. And another thing is that we heard Victor Öval, who will not be able to be here now at the discussion because he is being interviewed in the television, which is really nice for us. Victor Öval said something about the fact that when you try to find innovative ideas, you have to be able to make prototypes for the construction and for the manufacturing. For doing that, you need knowledge and skills. So I think that this is something that we really have to think about. We can't be creative and we can't break the rules until we actually have learned the hard facts. And I think that we have a lot to learn from Korea here. That was my point. So what I'm going to do now is to show you a little bit about the fact that the Swedish universities are research-based. Research-based universities who are working with education. Research and education go hand in hand. And quality assurance and quality enhancement are very important. And I will show you this by using the example of Lund University. But I could as well have taken Chalmers or Stockholm or Linköping or Uppsala. So just take this for what it is, and I still want you to know something about, how do I get the next one? Next slide.
The other side.
Ah, there it was.
And that's the back.
Okay, sorry. So, yes, we say that we are a world-class university. We are top 100. We were founded in 1666, so we are almost 350 years. As you can see, we have something like 42,000 students and individuals, and we have something like 26,000 full-time equivalents. We have 7,500 employees and over 800 professors, 4,300 lecturers and researchers and doctoral students. Our turnover is about 800 and more million euros, and that we are research intensive. We are the most research intensive university in Sweden. 2/3 of our budget is research, 1/3 is education. We are also a comprehensive university. We have 8 faculties: the medicine, engineering, science, social sciences, humanities and theology, economics and management, law, and we also have law and fine and performing arts, so music, theater and fine arts. This means that there is research and education going on in all these fields. When it comes to education, we're at the undergraduate, master and PhD levels, we have quite a lot of study programs. So we've seen this. Stockholm and Chalmers also showed the figures here. We have a lot of freestanding courses, and this goes back to the lifelong learning that our Speaker of the Parliament talked about. Sweden is known for this, that people go in and out education. This is going to be more and more a reality for the world and for people in the world, because it is a changing world. So I won't go into the details that you see here. You can read them, you can have them if you want. We have a lot of exchange students. We have more incoming than outgoing students. That's why we would very much like to strengthen the relationship with Korea and Korean universities, so that we can bring Swedish students to your esteemed universities. And we have a lot of students at the master level. One thing that Urban Ahlin, the Speaker of the Parliament, said is that our students are in all decision-making bodies, and I think this is something which is unique for Sweden or for the Nordic countries, and it's not so usual in other regions in the world. You have a very authoritative way of looking at the student. The student has to know his or her place, and I think that we can learn a lot from you, but you can also learn perhaps something from us. So the students are equal members in all decision-making bodies. This is according to the Swedish university law. And they are within the decision-making bodies, from the individual course to the university board. And this also has to do with the fact that the students are have been taught to be independent, and this critical thinking that they have. And they actually help us a lot, and I will come back to that when it comes to creative education. And that the students are organized as student unions. I want to tell you, these are usually not political unions. Victor Öhvall told you a little bit about the Max IV laboratory. Why am I coming back to this? I think it's important for Korea to know what is going on, that Sweden is paying a lot of money for these two research infrastructures. The first one, which Victor Öhvall told you, is a Swedish facility. Actually, it belongs to Lund University, but the universities that are present here also pay for this facility, and therefore it just has to be a success. So we will learn a lot more about material, and there will be breakthroughs within medicine and engineering and science. This is using electrons and in a synchrotron radiation to study the material at a very atomic scale. This is fantastic, and as Victor said, the facilities are already ready. They are making tests, and it will be inaugurated on the brightest day in June 2016. And then we have the ESS spallation source. This is a European consortium, so the major countries in Europe are paying a fortune to contribute to this facilitation. This is a neutron science facility where neutrons are scattered to analyze materials, going through in a way through the materials in a way that has never been done before. The first neutrons will be up and running in 2019. We are an entrepreneurial university. I won't go into this much more because I think that Victor already told you quite a lot about this. And the innovations, we've already heard about them. So now I want to come to the creative pedagogy. So remember, we have the research that is done. This is important to have the knowledge. I would say that Sumi Park, we were talking about the traditional and the new skills that we have. I think it is not only either or, but it is a bit both. So the creative pedagogy that we are aiming at in Sweden is to inspire citizens and leaders of tomorrow to be curious, and curious our students are. They have to be driven, what you were talking about, Jan. They have to really find the way out and seeing, well, you're shaking them, saying, well, you don't have any questions? Come up with the questions. Otherwise, I will be at your throat like this until you give me them. But responsible, and that's, I think, is very important, and capable of academic thinking. So academic thinking doesn't come from above. So you have to work hard. And therefore, teaching must be based on research and excellent methods of pedagogy. And I will go into online courses and MOOC courses, and I will tell you why it's so important to link the research part to the education and the methods of pedagogy. What are the driving forces to have a creative pedagogy? Well, as we all know, we want to be seen, we want to be loved. So the teachers, they are driven to share their research. Look, I've done this, don't you understand how nice this is? Victor Öva told us about the shower with regenerating the water. Well, this is fantastic, not only for those who created it, but actually what this can do, for instance, for underdeveloped countries in Africa. And this is already going on. This is quite nice. Also, innovations when it comes to cleaning water. So the teachers really want to show this. They want to give this out to the world. But at the same time, as the Deputy President of Stockholm, Hans Alfredsson, said, it is difficult to get the teachers to use the new pedagogy. So even though we know that the new ways of digital learning, they are likely to excite top researchers, we have to think about the fact that they must see what's in it for them. They must see that this facilitates innovation in research and teaching. And in Sweden you have a motto saying, you can't teach old dogs to sit. But sometimes that's really what we have to do with some of our brightest researchers. So the challenge is then to engage strategically with online learning at a time when changes in digital delivery are speedy, dramatic, and often unpredictable. Why am I saying this? You know about the disruptive ideas that came out of the first MOOCs. Universities will disappear. We will only have everything online. People won't come to campus and so on. I don't think that this is the truth, because we know that what is going to be the content of these courses that are online courses. The content must be the fact that drives the courses. But still there are people thinking that, well, the online teaching can be done by some university colleges, and then we have the research facilities like some kind of research institutes. I don't believe in that. Anyway, we know that the digital world moves very fast and on a grand scale. What have we learned until now? Sweden is a small country. I told you about our budget. We have a lot of research money going into the universities. Our government is really, really keen on us being on top notch when it comes to research. Education has been falling behind quite a lot, and actually when it comes to online learning, very much because of political reasons. So I think that one lesson that is learned is that we really have to act now, and we really have to go for the pedagogical development. MOOCs is one way of learning. MOOCs means massive online courses, open courses for everybody. Is that what we're going to use our money in Sweden? The university says. But it's not about only attracting new students like some kind of marketing, but it is actually understanding what it means with a flipped classroom that we heard you talking about also, Stefan. So MOOCs can help us to understand how we can develop our education to meet the needs of tomorrow or even of today. So all forms of online learning challenges traditional forms of education. This requires financing and new skills. Lund University has started 3 MOOCs, one greening the economy, the other in European business law, and the third in sexual and reproductive health. And we have so many followers. I don't know, there were the applicants, there were something like 50,000 for the first course. Of course, not everybody fulfills these courses, but we've learned a lot. And do you know why we have learned so much? Because we have had the students with us. What has been so exceptional we learned with the MOOC courses is that our students prepared the courses together with the teachers. And the students are, as we said, curiosity-driven, they are critical and so on, and they are very important in this work. So when we are looking at these courses and also online courses, which we usually do also combined with a flipped classroom, for instance, then this has to be done to enhance the learning and the teaching experience. Still, as I told you at the beginning of my speech, the quality assurance is very important. So this is a question of reputation. We know about universities who have given courses, and the courses were a failure, and this, of course, is not good for the branding of the university. So the quality assurance of online courses is a continuous must. This is also because we are at the focus of people from outside the university. And I'm almost done here, but I want to go back to what I think is very, very important. If we are going to deal with digital technology, we have to see to it what can come out of this, rather than seeing that the digital technology enhances the educational and research missions. And you could say, why? Because it is the content, the thing I pointed out at the beginning, it is the content of the courses. It is what we want to communicate and how this can be used within a very defined academic strategy, I think. So digital technology, yes, that is nice, but the content has to go hand in hand. And I think that we can help each other out here, Korea and Sweden. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. So at this moment, I'd like to invite the panelists or the presenters for this session up on the stage. Please join me in welcoming them back onto the stage for a discussion.
Maybe we should sit and zoom
All
in.
right. So this is the moment of truth. See if you actually came up with any questions. So,
Them here.
anyone?
So, okay, so we're trying to foster innovation, creativity. Some of the solutions, most of the solutions that I was hearing were about engagement and about sort of shaking people. They wake up, ask the right questions, challenge things. So at the same time, we just heard a lot about online courses, and those, they seem like they're a hot topic, we're expanding them, and they do a really good job with access. But in many ways, you know, I'm no expert, but it seems to me that that actually runs counter to the objective of fostering creativity and innovation when you're really, you know, you're looking at a screen, you're not being shaken and challenged really actively. So what can we actually, or how can, am I wrong about that? How can we sort of adjust online courses to, you know, touch on that?
Good question.
In that case, you are thinking about the online courses 1.0 perhaps, because many things have happened after that. There's much student engagement between the groups of students that are working within a course, for instance, and also the monitoring of the teachers as such. But I don't think that this is counterproductive. This is one part. I'm talking about one little small part, the online courses that we have, but what we're learning from the online courses is important for the pedagogy that we have in the flipped classroom, for instance, where instead of using a teacher speaking in 2 hours in front of the students, this can be recorded and monitored in a way that when the teacher meets the students, you can have actually creative discussions where you are at their throat saying, come on, tell me what is going on. So I don't see that there is some counter thought there.
Anyone wants to add to those
I
remarks?
have two personal experiences, as you understand. That's the pattern of what I would like to share, personal experiences. And the first one is when I recorded a lecture for a MOOC. And that was very difficult. I had to invent a persona. I took something from my wallet to put on top of the camera so I could have a soul to relate to. I can admit that to you now. My boss is not here. I related to a small stuffed animal on top of a camera. It's very difficult to create the report when you don't see your students. On the other hand, I got the opportunity the other year when I happened to visit a student of another university. She happened to be not on campus. It was a Swedish university where they offered televised lectures. She was at home because she was babysitting my daughter. I was going back to her. I didn't know that she was a student of this university, and she was sitting in her living room watching a lecture on a topic that interested me with another student. And their way of commenting what the professor said could never have happened in class. So the fact, I always thought that when you have a MOOC, they are not there. But they might be more there in comparison to what they are in the audience. And I would never have learned that if I hadn't had this babysitting opportunity.
And I also think that the fact that the students are with us creating these online courses is a very, very important part, because they won't take a crap. They will tell you face to face, this is not going to work. So, and then we have the other part, which has to do with widening participation. Not everybody can be on campus, and this is one way of dealing with that.
But definitely one threat is laziness. If students enroll to get away with a degree as cheap as possible, well, that doesn't help quality, you know.
So maybe MOOCs, if I may add, are complements to direct learning, but never substitutes. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say. But maybe we will also see in the future. It depends on how the market reacts to MOOCs, because if you have access to the knowledge and you can actually get credits, if you have institutions that give credits for what you can bring forward by having followed a MOOC, then we are into something else. But still, the MOOCs have to have a content. The content is given by the researchers. The researchers are at the university, so it all
Yep.
turns back to that.
Any other questions? Yes, up here.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentations. I have a question for Professor Park in the first place. I think you distinguish between the traditional forms of learning and the modern, modern forms.
Yeah, thank you.
Does
I
on
can
you-
say on that issue, as I told, as this is presented, traditional learning is also very important, but because students must learn facts. If they shall be creative, only it can be done when they are master in existing knowledge.
Yeah.
If they shall be critical, creative, it should be based upon mastering on existing knowledge and method.
Right.
So only in that way they have to combine. So please don't misunderstand.
That's how I understood you. I did not understand
So,
that you want to completely
Yeah.
replace it.
Okay.
But my question is another one.
Yeah.
So in your experience and in your research, what have you found are the best methods for organizations or countries, maybe even, to take that, to get to that second learning perspective as well? So to add the more modern, interactive, engaging perspectives, if they do all the traditional stuff. What works best?
Actually, if the distinction between traditional learning, I mean, traditional learning is, I am most concerned with the methodology of pedagogy. We can still teach by involving people in seminar style, or so that the participant element become increased. So it's really, when I am talking about also new paradigm, it's about the pedagogical methodology. Instead of let students just sitting and one-way communication of professors just delivering. This is passive communication. But traditional learning focused, we can also be creative to have better pedagogy so that students are more participated.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, up in the front. Microphone on the way.
Hi, my name is Kevin, and I'm with Sense and Sustainability from Harvard. My question is directed toward Professor Wickenberg, related to the anecdote that you provided us. And I was just curious, in that example where Pontus, he didn't know that he was doing something better, but he had actually broken the rules and had come out with a better outcome. Relating to that to a actual company example, if an employee comes up with a better solution but doesn't really know that they've done it, how do you propose a company can sort of engage their employees to make sure that they do recognize when a change is made for the better?
That was one very relevant question. And that is typically the way to respond to a question in order to save some time to have a good answer. In this case, I just wanted to point it out that that was a really relevant question. Because the typical way that we organize to fix this problem is to ask people to reflect upon what they do. And here we have a thought error, because typically it's difficult for us to learn what we do. It's typically others who see what we do when we perform, yes? So typically we need to create some discussion. And I offered you an exhibit. Did you hear me say that when we, the software engineers, were involved, all of a sudden we ask people, describe our processes, and when we deliver accordingly to them, all of a sudden they don't fit. It's not that they forgot to tell, it's the system that makes them remember what they actually do. And it's very difficult to fix. Typically, it's simpler if somebody else who is knowledgeable about understanding this. And I like to use the model or the way of think of Dr. Phil. He's a professional of fixing people's broken marriages. I don't know if you watch Dr. Phil in Korea. I must say that I was not interested in Dr. Phil much myself until my mother kind of forced me, watch this, he's really good, he's really good. He kind of had this pattern of describing to people what they actually did, to replace their ideas of their performance with a complementary idea of their performance to make them wake up. And while Dr. Phil is involved in situations that would be not in a company level but in a family level, I would like to see that more in use. But there's no easy fixes. We know that consultants inside organizations, they never live long. They collect so much knowledge power that they eventually are thrown out. The people are not killed. Perhaps they become consultants and earn a lot of money. I don't know. But typically, it's difficult to organize for this because we bump into other challenges in the organization. But my answer to conclude is it's typically better to ask for help. What do I actually do here that I'm not aware of?
Great. I think we have time for a couple more questions. Yes, in the back.
You mentioned at Lund that you have a lot of student involvement in course design and sort of the entire operation of the university. I was wondering what that looks like in practice. Is it student committees? Is it students sitting on university-wide committees or university boards? How do you actually get the students to be engaged with the sort of formation of courses and university policy?
Okay. We're talking about a little bit different things. One is that they have the right to be in decision-making bodies, and they are, for instance, in the university board. The students are usually very, very prepared, and also organized in a way that they can influence decisions and so on. And that is one thing on the policy-making part. But when it comes to design of courses, it depends on, we are still, I would say, at an initial level when it comes to campus courses. But when it comes to the online courses that I was referring to, they have been in from day one, actually, how to build up the courses. They have not been just coming in and giving their opinion on what the teachers thought that they were going to present and how they wanted to design it. But they actually were active in the team of the teachers who were preparing, together with technicians and pedagogic developers in the course making. So I would like to say that this has been the most, I say, disruptive understanding that I have taken from these MOOCs, actually, because that helps us into the campus courses, into other distance courses. We have to use the students. The students are agents for change. But this was the first step. So we have to distinguish between the course creation and the fact that they are part of the decision-making bodies.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Personally, I'm curious to hear from the folks in the audience who are actually engaged in or products of the Korean education system themselves. All right. Oh, yes, we have a winner.
네, 한 가지 질문이 있는데요. 지금 쭉 토의해 주셨고 그리고 말씀해 주셨던 이런 어떤 사례들을 보면 사회 환경적인 그런 결과들 때문에 우리가 창의적 교육 혹은 어떤 새로운 테크놀로지를 활용한 어떤 교육들로 나아가야 된다라고 말씀을 하셨던 부분들이 상당인 것 같습니다. 그런데 실질적으로 사회가 발전하면서 동시에 우리 교육의 대상이 되는 학생들 역시 달라졌을 것 같은데요. 흔히 우리가 밀레니엄 세대라고 얘기를 하잖아요. 그래서 지금 교육을 담당하시는 앞에 계신 분들과 또 이제 교육을 받는 학생들은 또 다른 어떤 세대인데 그러한 학생들의 변화 때문에 지금 어떤 교육 방향이나 교육의 어떤 솔루션이 새로 어떤 달라져야 되는 부분 혹은 그런 부분들을 고민해서 반영을 하셨던 그런 내용들이 있다면 공유 부탁드리겠습니다.
Great. I'm going to try my limited translation skills here. I think the gist of the question, if I understood it correctly, was to the extent that the needs and the challenges that are faced by the students themselves is changing. And to the extent that, for better or worse, the generation up here and the generation who will be actually utilizing the educational services, there's a gap.
Yeah.
How have you dealt with that challenge and incorporated it into pedagogy or your thinking about creative education? Is that even remotely within the ballpark of your question? Yeah. Close, he says. So.
Well, I think that I answered a little bit about that at the question before, because I think that you have to have the students are our best critical friends. And it is also a question of letting the old generation, we're not old, we're the middle-aged generation, okay? Yeah, young in spirit. Letting us understand the value of the students' experience and the students' thoughts. Not always are the students' thoughts applicable right now, but it is some kind of a tango that we have to dance together. And I think that in Sweden we have come quite far here, but I think that in Korea this is something where we could help each other out with the technique and the pedagogy that you have to use. Because we have to be creative. You are creative young people. You know the latest techniques, but still there is the content also and the knowledge that has to come.
Sure.
So, yeah. I don't know if you want to say something more. Sumi?
Any additional thoughts?
The question about how to be able to adopt for change of change, not only change, is an intriguing thought. And what I have learned is that there is a problem with thinking of that problem too much. Because in the end, and I return to using the word, the dragon seed of trying to prepare too much for that is nihilism. And nihilism is not something good. It leads to some kind of apathy. So we must think of that risk or that challenge and try to adopt for it as much as possible, but not giving up what you said earlier, that the master knowledge is there. I think we could discuss the Swedish educational system. Some parts of it has really left out the knowledge of what is current because the technology of tomorrow is not going. But I don't believe that all students can master a topic if they are unable to see the bolts and nuts of the topic. It's important to get the sense of it. Yes.
When we relate to your questions, now all of us probably more or less focused on how to change our pedagogy and learning system and education so that we are better equipped to the societal change. I mean, also students and us as professors, we are the part of that change. I mean, there is not clear borderline with those actors in school system and actors in society. But the way we practice, even though we can see that the society is changing, the way we are doing, still we have lots of the traditional way. We are very slow to equip, slow to change our way of doing. Although we can see many change in our mind, also students, the way they learn. Students are today really equipped many electronic things, mobile, and just simply if we for instance, don't make disciplines very clear in the beginning of the class. For instance, turn off all your mobile. Then during the class, for instance, you will get many disturbance. So that is just a simple thing. Also, we shall really be aware that part. But I mean, there is no clear line which close the school system as a member of school, teachers, students. They are also a part of that changing society.
Cool.
May I say
Sure,
something?
one last, yeah.
Yeah, I want to say that we shouldn't just think of teaching and learning as one single thing, because there are many parts in the education. So you were talking about problem-based learning. We have then the assessing of the skills. You have the general skills that are very important as a learning outcome from what you have learned and so on. So there are different methods and also different occasions of bringing in the dialogue between teacher and student.
Great. I'm afraid that's all the time we have today. Please join me again in thanking our speakers for a wonderful session.